Hello everybody, Kevin here. The Boundary Waters has made the news recently due to its closure in August of 2021 due to extreme drought and wildfires. Okay guys, you may be asking, what are the Boundary Waters? The Boundary Waters is an area of protected wilderness in northern Minnesota and an adjoining area of Ontario, a province in Canada. What is known as the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness adjoins and is under the management of the Superior National Forest and also bordered by Voyageurs National Park in the United States, and on the Canadian side of the border there is a wilderness area in the Quetico Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada, and they make up this large area of contiguous wilderness. In this video, I will concentrate primarily on the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, otherwise known as the BWCAW, or Boundary Waters for short. The BWCAW, as we know it today, was created by an act of Congress and signed into law by President Jimmy Carter in 1978, although its origins begin in the early part of the 20th century and evolved throughout the following decades. In the early 1900s, Minnesota's Forest Commissioner, Christopher C. Andrews, persuaded the state to reserve 500,000 acres, or 2,000 square kilometers of land, near the current BWCAW, from being sold for timber harvesting. A later canoe trip in 1905 impressed him with the area's natural beauty. He was able to not only save an additional 141,000 acres, or 570 square kilometers, from being sold for development, but also convinced the Ontario government on the Canadian side of the border to preserve some of their land as well, by noting that the area could be, quote, an international forest reserve and park of very great beauty and interest, unquote. From this collaboration came the creation of the Superior National Forest and the Quetico Provincial Park in 1909. Gradually, over the years, the BWCAW began to take shape. By the early 1920s, roads had begun to be built through the Superior National Forest for the public to access the area for recreation. Because of this, in 1926, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture William Marion Jardine set aside a section of 640,000 acres, or 2,600 square kilometers, within Superior National Forest as a roadless wilderness area. The nucleus of the BWCAW had just been formed. Congress passed the Shipstead-Newton-Nolan Act in 1930, which prohibited logging and dams within the area to preserve its natural water levels. The amount of protected land owned by the government continued to grow through additional land purchases and shifts in boundaries. The area became known as the Superior Roadless Primitive Area in 1938, when the area's borders were expanded and altered to roughly match the existing borders of today's BWCAW. The area's rustic and undeveloped character was further ensured by additional laws and actions. The Thigh-Blatnick Bill of 1948 allowed the government to purchase the remaining privately owned homes and resorts in the area. President Harry Truman issued an executive order in 1949 which prohibited aircraft from flying above the area below 4,000 feet. In 1958, the area was officially named the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. The area became a unit of the National Wilderness Preservation System by the Wilderness Act of 1964. The 1978 Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness Act created the Boundary Waters rules and regulations pretty much as we know them today. The Act established limitations on motorboats and snowmobiles, established a permit-based quota system for recreational access, and restrictions on logging and mining within the area. Today, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area encompasses 1.1 million acres, or approximately 1,703 square miles, or about 4,400 square kilometers. The BWCAW extends 150 miles or 240 kilometers along the US-Canada border. The Boundary Waters is a mixture of forests, glacial lakes, and rivers and streams. Nearly 20% of the BWCAW's total area is water. Within its borders are over 1,100 lakes and hundreds of miles of rivers and streams. The other 80% is mostly forest, with the largest remaining area of uncut forest in the eastern portion of the United States. The BWCAW attracts over 150,000 visitors annually. It contains more than 2,000 backcountry campsites, 1,200 miles or 1,900 kilometers of canoe routes, and 12 different hiking trails, the longest of which is the border trail at 65 miles or 105 kilometers. Of the more than 1,100 lakes within the Boundary Waters, only 14 allow motorboat traffic, mostly on border lakes between the US and Canada. The only other modes of transportation are limited to hiking or non-powered boats such as canoes and kayaks. The winter months allow for winter camping, skiing, and snowshoeing. So, now that you know a few of the facts and history about the BWCA, what is it really like to take a trip there? A lot can depend on the time of year and weather conditions, as well as the area you are traveling in. While it is all remote, rugged, wild, and beautiful, the type of terrain can vary quite a lot. The entry point you choose is a huge factor. This is going to be a very generalized description from my point of view. Personally, I prefer trips in mid to late July or early August, as the weather is more consistently nice. That being said, it is not always nice, and you must be prepared for adverse weather, whether it is rain or drought. Rain is pretty obvious, as you and your supplies can get wet, and there is a possibility for severe storms and flash floods. Droughts are a bit different, as you may have closed lakes and entry points due to wildfires, fire bans that limit not only campfires, but the fuel with which you heat your food, hot weather, high winds, and evacuations due to wildfires. Generally speaking, you may only camp at designated campsites. This is to limit the impact we have on the environment. Campsites are marked on maps of the BWCA, which you can purchase online or buy directly from outfitters in the area. These maps usually also mark trails, portages, and entry points. They can also show depth and elevation information. Get a map. Speaking of outfitters, they can tell you of any fire restrictions or other environmental factors, let you know about cool places to go and see, as well as letting you know if there are sites or lakes with problem bears raiding campsites. The campsites are primitive. There is no pump or well. All the water you drink and use will be from a lake, river, or stream. While the BWCA is known for its amazingly clean and clear lakes, you must not drink the water without some form of treatment. Not to be gross, but after all, not only is the BWCA known for its clear lakes, but also its fishing. And where do fish go to do their poo? Not to mention many other biological functions. Then of course there are other animals like moose, bear, loons, beavers, etc. that have no problem with letting things go in the water, so to speak. My favorite method for clean drinking water is filtering it. You will want a filtering system that can handle not only particulates, but certain microscopic organisms and pathogens, such as bacteria. There are several filter styles you can get, such as pumps and gravity flow filters. My favorite is the gravity filters. There is a bag that has the unfiltered water at the top. The water drains through a hose with an inline filter into a clean bag below. You hang it from a tree and continue with your other activities as it works. Other water treatment options include boiling water and chemical treatment. Boiling water can use a lot of fuel, and chemical treatments, in my experience, add a flavor to the water I just don't like. Aside from a place to pitch your tents, a BWCA campsite will always consist of two main features, and they are a fire grate and a wilderness box. Sometimes you will find logs or stones set up around the fire grates and seats, but that is not a given. One thing you will not see at a campsite in the BWCA is a trash can. All trash and waste must be packed out with you. If you pack it in, you pack it out. So, what is this wilderness box which I mentioned? Remember how I said the sites were primitive? Well, brace yourself. As mentioned, the campsite will have a fire grate. Well, look to the back of the site for a trail heading away from the lake or river and follow it a couple 100 feet or so until you get to a pit toilet with no walls. That is a wilderness box. Never throw food or other garbage in them, only your own waste. Wilderness boxes I have encountered include boxes that look like strongly constructed wooden crates with a toilet seat and a heavy lid, and like this example, made like a fiberglass cylinder with a seat and no cover, similar to what is in a standard public pit toilet. A little tip: check for spiders before you sit, and apply mosquito repellent to your buttocks, especially if it has a lid. This is important to remember. You cannot reserve campsites in the BWCA. They are first come, first serve, so be prepared to have a second or third option in mind if your first choice is taken. Another thing to consider is not all campsites are created equal. They can vary a lot in their quality. Some sites can accommodate a larger group or larger tents. Some sites are ideal for a small group or small tents. Some sites have difficult landings for your canoe, and some sites can have a beach. Depending on the lake, some sites are at lake level and other sites may be up a hill. Due to wildfires and storms, some sites may not have tall trees for shade and hanging food packs, so watch for that also. If you are on a shallow lake or have a campsite near a marsh or bog, then the chances of mosquitoes are higher. For me, a slightly raised site on a point is almost ideal because you can get a nice breeze off the lake, which can help keep the bugs at bay. You can stay at a campsite for up to 14 days. Since you don't have to move every day, I like to find a good site and set up a base camp. From there, those in my party can take day trips to interesting places, or hike the trails in the area, or even just chill at the site relaxing and reading a good book or just fishing. You must take precautions when camping. For instance, it is recommended that you either hang your food or have a bear-resistant container. Whichever method you choose, there is no surefire solution to keep your food bear-proof. The most these methods do is provide a delay for the bear so that you can drive it away. Never ever take food into your tent. The lingering smell can draw bears and entice them to try and get into your tent. Also, never feed smaller animals like chipmunks or squirrels, as this can socialize them, but also encourage them to get into your food. Speaking of wildlife, the Boundary Waters is teeming with wildlife. From large animals like moose, deer, bear, and wolves, to smaller animals like beaver, otter, raccoons, and many other types, from rodents like chipmunks and squirrels to smaller predators like fox or fisher. Loons and eagles are common sights, as well as songbirds. There are invertebrates of all varieties and shapes, sizes, and annoyances. Mosquitoes and biting flies suck, literally. And then there are the water creatures, such as fish, turtles, crayfish, and water insects. Some animal sightings will be rarer than others. I have heard wolves howling at night almost every night I have been in the BWCA, but have never met one in person. The same with bears. Bears are common, but if you take the proper precautions with your food and trash, you may be able to avoid an encounter. Mostly I have encountered chipmunks, squirrels, and turtles around our campsites. We also had a moose cow near our site on one trip. I have encountered signs and tracks of larger animals, such as moose while portaging, and some creepy crawlies while hiking. Just treat the animals with respect and don't approach them, especially the big ones. Some encounters may be inevitable, for instance if a bear raids your camp. Now I have no experience with that, so ask an outfitter on the best way to survive a close bear encounter. One thing I will say is that all the advice I've heard is to make a lot of noise to try and scare it away. Remember, the best way to see wildlife is to be alert and be quiet. A loud party will generally drive wildlife away from you. A loud party is also disrespectful of other campers. Sights can be few and far between, but sound travels far across open lakes. Your journey, while full of challenges, should also be a relaxing and peaceful time where you can forget about your troubles for a while and just live in the moment, experiencing the beauty of nature and the solitude. Remember that other campers are trying to do the same thing. And with that, I think I will end this video. I will try and put relevant links in the description below. Remember, the BWCAW is a wilderness. There are hazards and challenges, but the rewards are great. Follow the rules and regulations, tread lightly and leave no trace so that this remarkable, pristine wilderness and its flora and fauna will be available for future generations of people to enjoy. Thank you for watching.